Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Writer Drawn Podcast, and thanks for joining us on the epic adventure we call writing. We're your hosts,
Holly Rebelliard.
Austin Matthews.
and I'm Bob Adato. And today we have a very special quest. Quest? God, I'm already messing up. A special guest, the Queen, Parker J. Cole. Excuse me. I
All
am
over
just
the
all
place.
aflutter. Yeah, this is what two coffees do to me. The Queen, Parker J. Cole. Welcome, Your Majesty.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Hey, I forgot about a topic. There's something else. I haven't done a podcast in a while. We're going to be talking about right the end. So I can't wait to dive into this. But Parker, tell us about you and your work.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Really looking forward to the conversation. I am an author, podcaster, and speaker. I'm the head of my podcast network, PJC Media. And what we do, we showcase Christian authors from all over the world. And I've been doing that now for 12 years. I did take a year hiatus last year because I had a lot going on. But I'm back at it. And so we're back now on Substack and YouTube. And so it's been really an adjustment because I have like over 1,000 shows that have to be migrated over to YouTube and Substack
Mm.
because, my other platform is gone. But what I like to write about, I love exploring history through the vehicle of romance. So I primarily write historical romance, and I write both for the faith-based market and for the general market. I am a traditional published author as well as an indie author, so what you call a hybrid. I have I want to say about 60 works, 60 published works out. I have some more coming up. I have three coming up in the next couple of months that I have to get done.
Wow.
And so we'll get it done. We'll definitely get it done. I don't know
Good.
how, but we'll get it done. And just I constantly push myself as a speaker. I love to talk about encouraging authors. I like to talk about just writing romance because I love romance. I love to dispel those notions about what exactly is romance
Mm.
and all sorts of things. I'm a person with a lot of different interests. So I can pretty much flow with your crazy. So whatever crazy you got, I can flow with it, except taxes. I cannot flow with taxes. So if you want to talk about taxes, get me off the show right now. So that's a little bit about me. And you can find me online at parkerjcole.com or go to my Amazon and simply type in Parker J. Cole and you'll see me there.
And Cole is spelled Cole.
Cole. I
Right.
always wanted to be Kohl because it looks cooler, but I don't know. But I think like Parker J. Kohl would have looked better, but whatever.
Yeah. Well, either way, I mean, we have a Coles out here spelled exactly like that.
Okay.
Kohl.
Okay.
Just down the street, yeah, at the department store.
Hmm.
So you could have owned that. I don't know.
Next
So,
time.
yeah. Hey, so I got together with Parker sometime back, and we were discussing topics, and she came up with this amazing topic, which was, how to finish a book, and that is brilliant because all of us have been there, right? And now you've got 60 books, Parker, and you by now, I don't know, is it easier now, or do you still run into some issues?
I think you run into issues because life happens regardless. Like right now, I have a lot of my family's and a lot of health issues right now.
Mm.
And so that interferes with the writing flow. And so it's learning how to work past those obstacles, which I'll talk about. But I don't think it gets easier. I think you just try to get more disciplined. I think you get
Mm.
more disciplined because writing, every book is a part of yourself and you're learning how to write through things and your writing changes over time. Your writing evolves, I believe. This person you were when you wrote your first book is not the same person when you write your second, your third, your fourth, your 100th, because you're constantly changing, because your ideas are constantly evolving and transforming. And so I think it's not that it gets easier, you just get more disciplined at doing this thing called writing.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I mean, we've all been there, all of us, and maybe some of our listeners are there. I find that they're stuck in a cycle of the first chapter. They can't get the first chapter done. I don't remember if we've done a podcast on that yet. I think we have, but we can always do another. But but yeah, finishing the whole thing is it's a lot of work. I mean, so what are some of these obstacles that we're talking about?
Well, when it gets to writing, often the obstacle is really just one person, and it's you. You are usually your own obstacle, but it shows itself in different ways. And so one of some of the top reasons why people don't finish a book can be one of these: financial reasons. Stuff is happening financially, you can't afford to finish a book. It could be fear of putting your book out there because your book is very personal to you, whether you're writing fiction or nonfiction, a book of poetry, graphic novel, doesn't matter. It could be related to fear of rejection because now you put it out there, someone may reject your book, and that's like, here's my baby, is she beautiful? And you're like, no, she isn't. So that can happen, because you get reviews and you get critique and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But really, all the excuses is you.
Mm.
You are the one holding you back. And I can't emphasize this enough because I have been there. I have held myself back.
Hmm.
And we could talk about that if you like. I've held myself back many times. And once you stop holding yourself back and pushing through those excuses, and mind you, some of those excuses can be valid. If you have a health issue where you can't write, you know, you can't write. It's not it's an excuse, yes, but it's a valid excuse. But if
Hmm.
you're saying, well, I have to get it perfect, well, I'm sorry, we live in an imperfect world. Perfection doesn't exist on this plane. So
Yeah.
None is better than
it's not
perfect.
happening.
So.
Yeah. So that's what I would say. Usually you write the end when you stop giving yourself excuses of why you can't write the end.
Mm.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that's an important distinction too, what you said about obstacles, because we have to understand that there are real life obstacles like health issues or family matters, or just, time in a day, right? When you are working two jobs or you just can't carve out that time because you just had a new baby and things like that versus your self-imposed limitations, right? So
Hmm.
it's one thing if you have two jobs and you have a newborn baby and you just literally there's not enough time in the day versus well, I have an hour, I'm going to go and just, sit on the couch and watch TV versus spending that hour to write.
Mhm.
So it's okay to give yourself leave when you have those real excuses, but when it's just self-imposed, you have to take a step back and be like, hey, I'm doing this to myself.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, and something else you mentioned was the it's precious to you, so it's really hard to put it out there. But at the same time, I feel like especially when you're writing your first story, it's really easy to be like, this is my baby, it's so precious, I want it to be perfect. And it's like it feels like there's never going to be another idea that you have that's as good. But it's like the further on you get, I'm like, I have so many things where I'm like, man, it's such a better idea than that first book I ever wrote. Where it's like, it's fine, just get the first one done, get it out there, and it's going to have its blemishes, and that's what makes it so unique and
Yeah.
beautiful in its own ways. And move on to the next one, and just keep doing it until you've got 60 out there, and you're good to plow forward.
I think the quantity isn't as important as the quality.
Right. Yeah.
And over the years, I tell people when people come to me and ask for help about writing or getting some advice, I say, I think I've made all the mistakes so you don't have to. If you were to look at my first book was a Christian horror story called Dark Cherub. And that was a book that took 10 years to write.
Hmm.
And when I read it now, I just shudder. And I say, I can't believe I wrote this because I actually did a first chapters read of my book on my YouTube channel, and I'm going to be doing that for all of my books. Just read the first chapter, share my thoughts about it, because I really am not the same person I was when I
Hmm.
wrote that book. And I was reading it, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh, this is awful," And so, and my
Yeah.
mother, God love her, my mother, she goes, "Oh, that's your best one. I know you've written that." I was like, "Mom, please stop."
Yeah.
I know you're supposed to be encouraging.
Yeah.
Please stop. And
Yeah.
so recently she told me, I just read it again. I think that's your best one.
Oh.
Like, mother, please stop. You know what I'm saying? Just like,
You're like,
please
I
stop.
know I have gotten better. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
But if mom didn't do that, and also another thing too, some excuses are you don't have that familial support because there are
Hmm.
people in 2025 who think being a writer is not real work. They think it's because it's a creative sort of enterprise and entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
They don't
Hmm.
think that it's real work. And who doesn't want to be J.K. Rowling or Stephen King or Nora Roberts or Beverly Jenkins? Who doesn't want to be those people, right? But most
Hmm.
authors do not make a lot of money from their work. And so what they can only hope, not only hope, what they can hope and strive for is to get your tribe. And we can talk about that a little bit later. Your
Hmm.
tribe is the people who follow you.
Mm.
So you can at least carve out a niche in this market for you. And the market has changed a lot from back in the day when we had the big major publishers who were the gatekeepers of the industry.
Right.
And one thing the Zon did that I'm very grateful for is that it broke away those barriers. So you have a lot of more indie authors who are making their niche and cutting their slice of the pie in this industry.
Hmm.
And without that, you wouldn't have that competition and or that camaraderie that comes from having that industry opened to different authors. I
Mhm.
like to use the example of England and the United States. You're not going to lord over us. The publishing industry, the big five, they were England. And here are all
Mhm.
the indie authors, we're the colonies. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Right.
And so our histories are intertwined, you
Mhm.
know, but we don't have to bow down to those big
Mhm.
five standards anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Going back to the Texas you were just talking about. That's why we left. But
Yeah.
it kind of hinting at a big thing that we either didn't see or don't really know about when we're new is the fact that we're not alone in this journey, right?
Mm.
Like, because we will isolate ourselves. We have to work. We have to be here by ourselves with the door closed or however to get this book done. But then who do you share it with? You know what I mean? Or who, you know what I'm saying? Like, because I'm sorry to say, yeah, my wife was not interested. She doesn't read my stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry,
Mine's the
again, I
same.
apologize just to say, yeah, she saw it as a hobby. She's like, you need, if it, she would always say, if you don't make any money, you need to find something else to do. And like, I was like, wow, so that's its own issues.
Yeah.
But you're talking about finding our own tribe. And I feel like that's how I started back when I was writing my first book. I was starting to listen to podcasts and it's kind of blowing my mind. Like, wait a second, like, why didn't I think about this? There's like writing groups, and there's other people. That's how we all met here. Holly and Austin and I met in a writing group about a year ago or so. But yeah, can you tell us about that? How important that is, finding your tribe?
It really is important because writers understand writers. If I
Mm.
go to you, Austin, and I say, Austin, I need to kill this guy. Do I kill him with a gun or do I kill him with a knife? What's the best place to put it? I'll put you. You wouldn't be like, what are you doing? You'd be like, oh well, let's figure it out. When I go here, I could do that. You would just flow with the crazy. You would flow with the crazy, seriously, right? Or you
100%.
can say, Holly, I need to make sure that when I add the weather here, does this help with the foreboding or the foreshadowing of what's about to
Mm.
happen? Or I go to Bob and say, Bob, I want the guy to fall off the cliff, then his parachute opens. How does that feeling feel when you have your parachute yanked
Mhm.
back?
Mhm.
And for writers, there's what's very interesting about writers is that nothing really is minute or too mundane because what people may consider mundane, we actually find stimulating, right? And writers get that. I could say, let's say I say, Bob, do you work at a nuclear factory? Yeah. "Oh, you do. You know what I'm saying? And all of a
Mhm.
sudden, your mind starts to have ideas. Like
Mhm.
I recently, I met a young lady who's doing a local TV show in my area, and I told her, I said, I'm going to wine and dine you, and you're going to tell me every single thing about it. I don't care how minute or how
Mm.
boring it is. So writers get it. We
Mhm.
get the fact of the camaraderie, but not only the writers, the readers. Part of your tribe is also your readers. So you want to market yourself toward your readers. Who is going to read your story? If you write
Mhm.
to market, and I'm in a romance community, so I'm coming from the romance industry. The romance industry is one of the most popular, if not the most popular
Yeah.
genre out there. Um, but romance is broken up into many different subgenres. And so like I write in sweet and wholesome and I write in historical, right?
Mhm.
And my guilty pleasures, and I've said this before, guilty pleasures, mafia romances. So I love mafia romances. So I know, bad girl. So anyway, so um, but if I'm a reader and I want to get to my genre that I like, I'm going to go to authors who write in that genre. So as an author who writes in that genre, I need to what? Market toward that genre. So I may need to network with other authors that write in that genre. You see what I'm saying? So you have to build your tribe. But the thing about most writers, I'm not one of them, is that they're introverts. Most writers are introverts. Most of them are. I'm an extrovert through and through. I never met a stranger, pretty much, And so, most introverts, most writers who are well, not every writer is an introvert. I shouldn't say that. I'm being too generalized, but
a lot
are introverts. And so, one thing with my podcast, one of my authors who came on my show, she told me, she said, or what they'll do, most introverts will attach themselves to an extrovert and just let them carry them along.
Yeah, it is like that.
Yeah. So, hopefully I went a little offbeat there, but those are the things you have to remember as you build your tribe. So it's really important to get with a writing group, virtual or online. Make sure the writing group is not it's a good fit. You may have to test out different writing groups because not every writing group is going to be for you. I was in a writing group when I first started several years ago. We eventually disbanded, not because we didn't like each other, but our interests just went two different ways, and they had two different just went different ways. Nothing was weird, no arguing or anything. And then you get some writing groups where drama, so you may have to test it out. I don't think you have to pay into a writing group unless you're getting some really specialized help. But if you want to do a local writing group or go on Facebook, some people hate social media. I know some authors hate social media. They don't want to be bothered, but you may have to bite the bullet, time yourself 30 minutes on social media, chit chat with somebody, and then get off and do your thing. So I really think once you build your tribe of both readers and writers that you can network with, cross promote, get help from, encourage, I think you'll start to feel less lonely. And that's another excuse because then you'll have other authors go, hey, how's your book going? Did you get that chapter? You need any help? Do you want me to read something? All that. And so once you get that tribe, you won't be as alone.
Yeah, I like that it holds you accountable too, right? Like you said, they're going to be asking you like, oh, where are you at with this chapter? How did this character arc turn out? And you can't just, see these same people over and over and be like, oh, well, I haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think too, like with our writing group, it's like, it's a good way for me to set like a soft deadline. I'm like, anytime we ask for submissions, I will have something. Like I will make sure if nobody else has something, I will have something to submit because it's like, okay, that's how I get things done is like milestone by milestone. So it's like, okay, cool. I'll have, 2 to 5 chapters that I'll submit. So
yeah, something that having a writing group, I've really learned, and this has helped me since I wrote my first book, because when I wrote my first book, I really struggled with writing it and not finishing it because I would get stuck on each chapter wanting it to be perfect. Even though I knew that there was editing coming at the end, I kept saying, well, this one has to be perfect. Otherwise, the next one's not going to make sense. And then the one after that is going to be even worse. And so I was stuck in this vicious cycle of just going back to the beginning of my chapter and rewriting and rewriting. And so having the writing group really helps because I know that I can write something. And if I have missed something, because these people have already, read some of my previous chapters, they're going to catch some of those things that I maybe think in my mind, but don't make it onto the paper. And so I am putting myself forward and actually getting the work done, but I'm not holding on to that fear of forgetting something and missing something because I know that, someone might mention it and then I have the ability to go back, which is something I did this past week. I went back and actually wrote a new chapter that went a few chapters back. And now I know that information is there. And as I continue writing forward, I don't have to be wondering if that information was right or not.
Yeah. And something I've started doing to like similar, but not even going back is just like, if I need to, like I realize I need to add something, I just add square brackets and I'm like, hey, go back and add this. And then at the end of the first draft, I just Control F and look for square brackets. And then I'm like, okay, cool. Now I know what I need to do in my next pass real quick. So just don't let yourself get in your way.
I think too, you want to make sure that the writing group is an effective one. You guys are just talking, just wanted to bring that out too. You want to make sure everyone is going to be supporting everyone. You don't want to get into a writing group where one person is star or all her supporting or his supporting cast. You know what I'm saying? You want there to be that equal. Okay, now you read my stuff. Because some people, now mind you too, if you're in like a mixed writing group where people write different genres, you're going to be exposed to maybe some things you don't particularly care for. Like I know one young lady, she writes sweet and wholesome, and she ended up in a local group where they write kind of spicy, you know. And
Mhm.
so she's like, "Oh gosh, they're doing things, you know." Um, and so, and then she gives them their word, her submissions. They're like, "Oh, church thing."
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right,
All
right.
right.
You know, and so I'm not saying they can't work. I'm
Right.
just saying you kind of want to make sure that
Yeah.
everyone will participate. Because I
Yeah.
can read horror.
100%.
I have no problem reading horror. But I've read steampunk for my show, but I'm not
Hmm.
like, let's say, a steampunk fan because there's a lot of
Yeah.
mechanical things, and the more mechanical it gets, my eyes glaze over because
Hmm.
I'm not very good at mechanics, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's just a word of caution too. Make sure that the writing group is productive for everyone, not just for the main attraction. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fair. And like, because I had to do that, I think whenever I submitted my first like horror chapter, I was like, "Hey, it gets a little gory. Is this okay?"
Yeah.
And like, if it's not, then it's like, okay, cool. Well, I can submit my horror to a different group if that's what's necessary. Because like, I write in all sorts of different genres, and it's like, it's also okay to belong to multiple groups. Like, if you write in different things, finding people that are like the most productive to give you feedback on those things, or even submitting it to two different groups and get two different sets of feedback is good.
Yeah.
But also looking for the group that's not just going to be like, oh yeah, it was good. Like getting real constructive feedback is such a good thing, and like it's a skill to give it, but also to receive it well. So that's hard.
It does
I
help
have a
with another excuse that people have, right? Is coming back to that fear of putting your work forward and battling that imposter syndrome. Because it helps you understand that one, there is no author out there in this entire world, alive or dead, that has ever produced a book that every single person loved.
That's right.
And that is something that people tend to forget. They're like, oh, if this person in my writing group doesn't like it, then that means nobody's going to like it. Well,
Mm.
that's not the case. And so it kind of helps ease you into that and understanding that, even if your work does need a little bit of improvement on the next draft, no one's ever going to think it's perfect, right? You're never going to think it's perfect. Nobody else is going to ever think it's perfect.
Yeah.
But that doesn't stop them from enjoying it. And then as a participant in a writing group, you have to understand that, okay, even if you don't read this genre or you don't love this type of book, you can always find something constructive in every work. You always can if you look for it. And so I think that's really important from both the writer and the reader side, is that you have to find that good balance.
I was gonna say too when you mentioned about the horror thing. So, um, I like horror. I grew up with my grandmother. Me and my grandmother. My grandma taught me about horror, and we watched horror with my grandma growing up. So we really enjoyed it. But what's interesting is that good writer friends will help you. So one of the biggest mistakes, oh gosh, one of the biggest mistakes I ever made was I had just started writing in historical. I first started writing contemporary romance, and so I
Hmm.
have several books in contemporary romance, and then I had the opportunity to join a multiple author series. Joined that, so I was writing in multiple author series. So all of a sudden, I get a call from my bestie. Her name's Lynn, and she's like, "Parker, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm talking to you." You know, and so she's like, she said, "There is no sea in Colorado." And I had put a C in Colorado because it's historical. Because my research, I didn't think this through, right? And so I said, "There's no C in Colorado." I mean, the name, yes, but there's
Hmm.
no C in Colorado, and that was the first thing you see in the first chapter of the book, right?
Okay.
And so thankfully, it was published early enough that I could hurry up and fix it, and because
Mm.
I hadn't did the paperback yet, I just did the Kindle version on
Yeah.
on Amazon, right? Did not send that to anyone to look at. If I sent it to her beforehand,
Hmm.
it was so embarrassing, right? Just like it's one of the biggest embarrassments of my writing career. There's no sea in Colorado. She said, "It's landlocked. What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so I say that to encourage you to also be careful too, and I hope I'm not getting too off track here. When you are getting feedback from people, especially if you're a new author, you really need to limit the people you're getting feedback from.
Mm.
And I'm sure you guys can relate to this. If you give it to too many people, what tends to happen is sometimes it gets soiled by too much feedback. And
Mhm.
so you start to lose your voice and your ideas because you're hearing all these different conflicting things.
Yeah.
Now, the guy who wrote The Martian,
Yeah.
he deliberately distanced himself from the manuscript. So when he got feedback for his book, it wasn't soiling his work because he was trying to make sure that the book worked, right?
Mhm.
But if you're a new author, I would limit feedback to no more than 3 people, no more than 3. And make sure those people, they could be your mom or your dad, your sister, whatever, but make sure they're people who really don't have a personal stake in your life. Like if I send something to Bob, Bob can be like, okay, Parker, you're writing military sci-fi. Okay, you need to get this, get a gun. We should have a gun,
Right. Yeah.
make sure they have uniforms. They don't wear
Yeah.
jogging suits,
Yeah.
stuff like that. So you want to make sure you can have like a personal, like one personal person who be your support. But the other people should be people who don't have a personal stake in you. So they don't have to lie to you. So you
Yeah.
say, oh, it's great. And you're like,
Oh
no, it's
God.
not.
That'd be like the worst, honestly. Yeah. I mean, honestly, yeah. When we got our writing group together, we had discussed this. Like, hey, we're here to be honest, and
Mhm.
if you have to have thick skin. It's just nothing personal. We're talking about our work. I want to know what's wrong with it. That'd be the last thing I'd want. Oh my God, it was so brilliant. It's perfect. You don't need to change anything. And I'm like, well, I'm not taking it to this guy anymore. But and Parker, just real quick, I forgot to tell you, like, we go off on tangents constantly. Like,
Oh yeah,
so
this is
go for
tangent
it.
control.
Yeah, we have talked about donuts for like 10 to 15 minutes with
that's
just
true.
because I made a mistake and
it was the end segment. I said donut, do this, and then so we started talking about donuts
for another 10, 15 minutes. But
anyway. You're welcome to go wherever you want with this. What'd you
cool.
have, Austin?
Then I was just gonna add, as far as like the getting advice and stuff, it's like to Parker's point, like it is your book, and just because you get feedback doesn't mean you have to accept it or make changes. Just be like, okay, this is something that somebody has noted, and like I feel a little bad because we do our writing group and I share on Google Docs, so like people get notified whenever I'm like reject suggestion, and so it's like okay, but you know what? It's like most of the time we're just like okay, hey. I'm really good about like, okay, I see where they're coming from. Let's see how many people do it. If I get more feedback, or if I'm like, oh, I don't know how I feel about it, let me submit it to like another person, get theirs, like ask a specific question of like, hey, how do you feel in this general area? Not being, too nitpicky. So it's like, let's see if they pick up on it. But yeah, getting second opinions is fine. But then also like at the end of the day, it's your book. If it's, if you give it to everybody for feedback, it becomes everybody else's book and not yours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
it's a real thing.
Yeah, because we're not here to. I mean, kind of like going back to what Holly was talking about. We're not here to make everyone happy. Like, that's impossible. You're not going to make everyone happy. If you want to write a book for your dad, you want to make him happy. I mean, I get it, but like, it should be you. This should be an expression of you. Yeah. This should be your fingerprints on this. This is your story. Like if Parker just said, "Hey, here's our writing topic: a boy finds a dragon." We're all gonna write about a boy who finds a dragon. All of it's gonna be different. I promise you. Just like they have been in the past. There's tons of stories about boy finding dragons.
Yeah, which
or romance.
Is actually one of the books I'm working on right now.
Oh, Austin! Wow,
hey,
great segue.
I told you about this. It's a boy finds an eagle, and then it gets tricked into becoming a vampire, and that's how dragons are born. So,
wow.
Because horror,
Let's do this.
Absolutely love it.
Let's do this.
Love it.
But yeah, so it should be your work. Like that's definitely something that I put into my head when I was writing my first book. It was like, you know what? Mm-hmm. I cannot worry about what everyone's going to think about. I want my story. I wrote it for me, and then I showed it like, hey, do you like this or not? Like, I don't care. Honestly, if you don't like it, this book is for me. I wrote it for myself. I like the heck out of it. So that's where I went with how I was writing that.
100%, because like whenever I write a book, it's my book. It's not Bob's book. It's not ChatGPT's book. It's not Clippy's book. It is my book.
Yeah, it's mine. Right.
You don't have to take suggestions from anybody that you don't, if you don't agree with it. So.
Sure. But make sure you know about if there's an ocean in the States or not.
That's fair. And you know what? If you want to write a pirate book in Colorado, you can. It's
yes, fun. You can. I know, Parker. I was almost going to say, you know what? In my story, there is an ocean.
It actually, that led me down path where I became more rigorous in my research. And because I didn't want to have that happen again, especially historical, because historical fiction writing is speculative in its own nature. because you are presenting the world that once was, whether it was 5 years ago, 100 years ago, so forth.
Mhm.
So far, the oldest book I've written that is, well, not the oldest, but that takes place in the oldest is a reimagining of Guinevere from King Arthur as a
Mm.
Nubian princess.
Nice.
And it takes place in 515 AD.
Wow.
They're called the Once a Future Queen, Guinevere Reimagined.
Mm.
And I remember, I remember when I did my research and I sent it to a developmental editor because this was totally different for me. I sent the developmental editor, and she's like, "All these names are Saxon, right?
Mm.
This me, right?" And she's like, "Well, it should probably be more well." I
Yeah.
said, "I worked really hard on those names, but
Yeah.
they were wrong. Those
Right.
names were wrong."
It's like the
And
difference
so,
between Arthur and Arthur. It's like,
yeah.
oh, come on.
But there is a difference, and those nuances matter. And as you
Mhm.
write, dear writer, as you write, no matter what you're writing in, you're going to find yourself sometimes obsessed with the details because the details may be extremely small, but they're going to add that immersive quality to
Yeah.
your work. And some readers will call you out. I have been called out many times over my stuff. And recently, I wrote recently because of some research I did with the Civil War for one of my books I'm part of. I was able to get what I think is a sense of, just an example, a sense of what the Southern civilians would have been back in the day. And I put a different light on President Lincoln. And so I'm writing from that perspective. And one of the readers in her review, she said, "What? This happened?" And she went and looked up what I had written in that story. She was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad Parker spent so much time on the research."
Mm.
Well, if I hadn't put a C in Colorado, probably would not have been as rigorous as I tried with my research. So that's why I say to writer listening to me, when you're writing, any excuse will stop you.
Mhm.
Even your mistakes can help you get better because you can't get better if you don't get this mistake pointed out to you. You can't get better if you don't get feedback. You can't get better if you don't push yourself. You have to push yourself because we will give ourselves excuses all day long. Lord knows I know, right? I'm too tired today. I worked hard. I can't write today. And I always say, if you want to develop a good habit, 5 minutes. You can write for 5 minutes, or if you have a phone, you want to dictate to your phone. I do dictation
Mhm.
sometimes. You do that. The thing is to write the end. That's the
Mm.
whole point. You can't edit a blank page and you'll never get it perfect. So if you just write
Mm.
the end, then you could go back and make it as close to perfection as possible. But eventually you're going to have to release it if you want to, release
Yeah.
it to the world.
Well, and that actually reminds me of some of my favorite workout advice that I think actually applies to writing as well. So, like Terry Crews was asked, "Hey, like what advice would you give somebody that's working out?" And he's like, "Go to the gym for an hour a day." He's like, "I don't care if you sit on the couch and watch TV. Go to the gym for an hour a day, and eventually you'll get so bored and pressured into doing the workout, you will do the work." And so, like the same thing goes with writing. Sit down to write, and it doesn't matter. You can just sit there and not do anything for an hour. Just think about it. But eventually you'll get so engrossed and you're like, I have to write something. I'm here. I've committed the time. So just commit the time to be there, to be present with your writing, and you'll get it done.
There
you
is
mentioned Terry Crews? I love Terry Crews. Keep going. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he's such a sweetheart.
there is a gentleman who wrote a book about this, and his name is completely eluding me right now. But something that it's Atomic Habits. Thank you. My brain's working
I
again.
just got that one, yeah.
And it's fantastic. And in it, he talks about how setting goals for yourself is not enough, right? Because goals can be pushed off. There's different things that can happen. Goals are sometimes not attainable. But if you change your mindset about who you are as a person, so it's not, I'm going to go to the gym today. It's, I am the person who gets up to go to the gym. And the more that you reinforce that in your brain, it becomes part of who you are. So it's not, I'm going to sit down and write for 5 minutes today. It's, I am the type of writer, or I am the writer who sits down and writes for 5 minutes every day, because it reinforces in your brain that that is who you are. And so it becomes easier to achieve those things because it is an integral part of you as a person.
I was thinking too, in that same book where I wrote "See in Colorado," one of the readers sent me my book fully annotated. They spent both books, they were connected, both books, and he annotated the books and told me everything I had did wrong. Um, which is quite daunting. It really is quite daunting.
Mhm.
But that was a crossroads for me. I could either be upset by the feedback because I had not received that kind of rigorous critique before, or I could accept it, right? And said, think about it from another angle. They did not have to do that.
Mm.
He did not have to spend time telling you where you went wrong. One of the things, for example, that he mentioned, I used the word he had a body of his physique was like pugilist or something like that, And no. Said he had a body of a boxer, and he said the proper term would be pugilist, and it was back in the 1800s. I said, no, it's body of a boxer. It's me, body of a boxer. He said, well, no, and he showed me the reason why that was the case. And I thought about it later. Then I said, okay, why are we getting mad at him when he's trying to help me? He doesn't have to do this. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so that also helped with me getting more rigorous. So now I use etymology all the time. When I'm using historical words, I use etymology all the time. So I'm using all these examples, dear writer, because these are things that will stop you. These were things that will stop correct. Well, I don't have the words. You can edit later. You can get your tribe together. Holly said, change your mindset. Well, I will also add too, there's nothing wrong with setting goals. There's nothing wrong with that. One of the guys said, make sure you set goals that are attainable. So don't try to set goals like, I'm going to write 500 pages today. No, you're not. You're not going to write 500 pages today. But you can say, I'm going to write 50 words.
Mhm.
And every word is a victory.
That's right.
So that's what you want to. That's how I think. Every word is a victory. On my Facebook page, I often put I'm writing because I write at night. So I often put writing. I have my queen picture out, and I say, the queen writes, wish me well, write the words, all the words. I say that almost every night, right? Because it's making myself accountable to the people who are watching. It makes me accountable. I want to look at like, okay, I wrote something today. You know what I'm
Yep.
saying? So yeah. So yeah.
Going back to what you said too about developmental editing, I think that that is also a fear and a reason why people put off finishing their book is because writing the book isn't really the end of the story, right? You
Mm-hmm.
then have to go through this rigorous period of editing or sourcing that editing out and then making those edits yourself, taking a harsh look at your story, tweaking it, going through the whole process all over again, sharing your work, going through that whole process all over again. It's a very daunting task. Once you get past that initial fear of sharing your work with someone, then you have to be open to that critique and then you have to make those changes.
Mhm.
And then once all of that is tied up with a pretty bow, you have to go out and start advertising your book or querying, which is a whole other beast on its own. And so that can be scary as well, right? And it's just like, well, I don't want to finish this because if I do, then what?
Yeah. When I got my contract with Harlequin, like I write for Harlequin Romance, which is one of the biggest, if not the biggest romance publishing company ever. I wrote my first book with them 7 times over a 2-year period. Um, was it hurt, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I almost hated these characters. Like I don't care what happens to these people now. They have been transformed into he was an artist at first, then he was this, and then he was a runaway sailor, then he was, all kind of stuff. So we settled what we settled on. And I had written it 7 times. And I remember the editor said a lot of authors can't handle this type of editing, because they feel attacked. And it wasn't that I felt attacked, it's just so much work. I really wanted to write for this company and I was
Mm-hmm.
willing to bite the bullet. And that's total such for another time. But I'm just saying that when you get a developmental edit, you have to be open to the fact that the editor actually sees more about the story than you do.
Yeah.
And I love editors. And again, that would not have happened if that gentleman from back in the day hadn't sent me an annotated book of my work and made me
Mm-hmm.
appreciate the time that people put to help you become a better writer.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
some people get mad. They don't like editors. I say, I don't know why. Why don't
Yeah.
you like editors? So, but she she helped me. She said, well, this is how we write, and it makes your writing stronger. So you want to get an editor that knows what they're doing. For me, it's a developmental editor because I was writing about a Welsh, you know, mythology with King
Mm-hmm.
Arthur, and I wanted to make sure I had that accurate. So I needed development edit, and I needed someone to look at it because I had been working on it for like 18 months, and I was done. Like I can't read this anymore. And sometimes if you can sometimes read a story so much you don't even see the words. And for me, like I was trying to read it and I couldn't because the words. I'm like I've read this so many times. You know what I'm saying? So you
Hmm.
need to send it to someone else and don't look at it for like 3 months. You know what I'm saying? Or maybe 6 months even, whatever your writing schedule is. So I say that. So don't knock editors. Editors are not there to hurt you. They're there to make your story better. Now,
Yes.
do you have to change everything an editor tells you to do? Not necessarily. But if it's not a hill you need to die on, then go ahead and change it. Like
Hmm.
one detail was I had put girl had a fox lined cape. That's just the scenery for the character. And she was like, "Well, can you change this to something else because we don't want to offend the readers?" And I was like, "Well, it's an animal fur. I mean, it's
Mhm.
1700s. What are they doing?
Yeah.
Can they have fake?" But was it going to be a hill I'm going to die on? No, not a hill I'm going to die on.
Yeah.
I just changed to like velvet, I think.
Right.
Just something like that. So not every change is the hill you have to die on. But if it's like really integral to the story, like I really can't change this aspect, then it's
Right.
okay to push back. But
Yeah.
most editors, when I was submitting to another publishing company some years ago, never forget the editor said, "I've never written a book." And I thought about that. I said, "Well, no, she wouldn't have, because she's the one acquiring the books.
Mhm.
And she
Hmm.
said, "I've never written a book." She said, "I couldn't imagine what it's like to write a book." And I was looking
Mm.
at her like, "You're an editor." But then I thought, I said, "No, she helps other people with their
Hmm.
work.
Yeah.
You know, that's why they can see
Right.
your story better." So that's another thing too. As you're writing, as you get your tribe together, you get your readers together, you get your thoughts together, marketing. You want to get with an editor that's going to be honest with you. I have two editors that I work with, because one will see something the other one won't see. So I have two editors I work with. You don't have to have two. You don't have to have two. That's just my process.
Yeah.
But I have two editors. Have I gone off the deep end, guys? I feel like I'm going off.
No.
Not at all.
I'm
You're
trying to stay
hilarious.
with the topic,
No,
but
you're fine.
I mean, we
it's
never do. It's fine.
Yeah, we never do.
an octopus of a topic. There are tentacles all over
Yeah.
this place,
No, you're right.
and in my desire to share my experiences with other
Yeah.
authors, like I feel like I've made all the mistakes, so you don't have to.
Yeah.
You know,
Hmm.
that's what I'm
But-
trying to impart.
Yeah. No, that's what we want. That we. I feel like that's how I learned the best. I want to know what you shouldn't do. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or what is
And-
something that like is gonna cause you so much headache? Like you can, but I'm just letting you know.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
And I think that's
What?
the nice thing about writing a lot of books is it's like the more books I write, I don't make the same mistakes that I made before, but I find new mistakes every single time. And so
Yeah.
each book I'm going to make probably just as many mistakes,
Mhm.
but I feel like my first draft is a lot further along than my first draft was.
Yeah.
And so
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know that it's easier because like I'm still challenging myself. It's like workouts don't get easier. You just are challenging yourself. You should always be challenging yourself to get better. And so the same thing's true with writing. You just got to get there and raise the bar on yourself. And like, I mean, that's at least how I see it. I'm competing with myself. It's like in Mario Kart where you can race your old ghost image. I'm always challenging myself to be better.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think that's where having those accountability partners helps you, right? Because you're holding yourself accountable, but then there's also those other people who are quote, holding you accountable to continue pushing yourself forward to finish your book. And, setting those deadlines for yourself, whether it's 1 page or 50 words or whatever it is.
Mhm.
What are some other ways that you guys think that we can push ourselves to finish our book?
I think you should write when you're most creative. And I am most creative between the hours of 10 and 4 in the morning. That's when I write, around that time.
10
I've,
p.m. to
I've
4 in the morning?
yeah, 10 p.m. to 4 in the morning. I write
Holy
at night.
moly.
And I've written things in the daytime, but the daytime is usually busy with other things, right?
Yeah.
So at night I'm more relaxed, I'm a little more sleepy. And I don't know how true this is, gang, but I've been told your right brain is more active, which is your creative side, the right side of your brain, which is your creative side, and your left side is more, that's what I've been told. I don't know how true this is, and more analytical. So at night your thoughts flow a little bit better.
Mm.
So if you got, like one friend said, butterflies shooting out electric, lightning, that's fine. You know what I'm saying? So those are some deadly butterflies. And so for me, I tend to write better at night. there's something about nighttime that just gets me going. But I talked to another author. She writes from 4 in the morning to 9.
Oh God, that's
And
awful too.
another author I know, she writes on her lunch hour because she's at work and she hates being at work. So she goes on her lunch. That's her time. See what I'm saying? So she can write
Yeah.
there. So write when you are best creative. It may be, and I'm not trying to be vulgar, but maybe when you're in the bathroom. In the bathroom, using the bathroom, have your phone with you, you start going, hey, I like that.
Yeah.
Relieving
But
myself.
if you're writing in
here.
the bathroom, don't do dictation.
Well, you know what? I get most of my ideas in the bathroom. I don't even have to be like using it. I can just walk in the bathroom. And it's from my childhood. That's how I knew I always wanted to be a writer. From my childhood, I was always in my imagination. I would stand in the mirror and I'll be like, I am the queen of, Lollipop Hill or something. And I would act out my stories. My twin sister, she was right for a while before she got cancer. And so she had got a writing block or something had happened. And she was like, I can't get back. I said, act it out. Yeah, go in the bathroom and act it out. So she's like, oh my gosh, you did that all the time when we were kids. Because I had a bathroom door closed and I'm talking to the mirror.
Yeah.
And but I've always done that. Sometimes you got to act out your scenes,
I mean,
Get
also
someone
the
to-
acoustics in the bathroom are great for like trying out character voices.
Yeah.
So,
And I like to do arguments. So like for me, sometimes to get a dialogue scene going, arguments, because arguing is a really good way to tell the truth. And how do people argue? Some people are very cold, some people are very hot tempered, some people are very still, some people are shocked, some people are afraid, some people tremble, So arguing is a good way to get information across. What did you say about my mother? I hate your mother. I've always hated her. I hate her so much. She took my dog and she got it. What do you mean my mom took your dog? You see what I'm saying? So you start to
Right.
there's so much information in it. There's a guy though who's neurodivergent and he has a hard time with like dialogue and stuff. And he was, how do I do this, Parker? I said, have them argue.
Yeah. There you go.
I will never forget the conversation I had with my husband where he realized I had been recording a bunch of our random conversations or things that he did that amused me. It was like, I might need to reference this later and record.
I love it.
So, and that's something too. It's like you can draw from anywhere. Like I keep a regular journal that I just write all my, inner workings. And then it's like, okay, well, I need to have this moment of introspection for a character. Let me flip to a time period where I was going through something similar and just like straight up like throw it in there. Like it's fine. Like character doesn't know it's my deep seated horror emotions. Like they can just know, hey, this feels real for some reason.
Yeah. Something that I've really been trying to do as well is really immersing myself. So historically, what I like to do is just sit down and write all the way through, because if I stop myself, then I start to overthink it. But I've been trying to connect more with my characters and my scenes, and that I will just kind of, if I'm struggling to write something, I will stop and I will sit there and I will just really think about it and just imagine myself and kind of almost like not quite meditation, but just like meditating on the scene and just thinking about what's happening around me, which character's head am I in right now? What would the expected response be? And things like that. And it's really helped me explore like my characters on a more deeper level, because then I'm really there. I'm not just writing about it. I'm actually experiencing it. Because then once you're imagining yourself in that situation, right, you can think about in your real life, what would a situation like that be like, but then imagining it from that character's point of view. And it's been really, really helpful for me.
Yeah, I feel like writing is just one giant exercise in empathy.
Yeah, but fiction does that though. And they were talking about how young kids, because, and this is academic, children have a hard time reading now. Literacy is really low, but fiction often helps you as the reader to empathize with a character. And if you can teach that empathy in fiction, then you can also relate that to the outside world. Because you go, oh my God, oh my God, and she was a part of his life. Oh my gosh, he had to shoot his dad because his dad was doing crazy things. And if you can start to empathize, then you can see that in the real world too. They actually talked about that. There's a correlation between teaching empathy with fiction. Pretty much good fiction. So, and mind you always have your ambiguous heroes, your morally gray heroes, and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's funny you say that you kind of get into it, because sometimes when I'm in the zone, I am in the zone. Nothing can disturb me, right? So when I'm in the zone, and my zone is I have to have a lot of noise around me. If I don't have a lot of noise around me, I can't tune it out. So I have the TV on, I have some music playing, I'll have another TV on or something. I need noise to tune out. But if it's too quiet, I can't think.
Mm.
So it's
That's funny.
it's the opposite. I need noise to blot out
Yeah.
because too much silence. I guess it's like someone watching me, And,
What do I do with this? Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So those are my thoughts. I hope that helps for our listeners and viewers here.
Yeah.
Just some of the things I've learned.
Yeah. I have one more thing to go over, and we touched on it a little bit, but because when I'm talking to new writers, like we're talking about, it's their precious baby, but it's really an extension of themselves. Each book should be, like I said, it should be. It has our voice. It'll have our fingerprints on it. It's us.
Mhm.
But how do we separate what people say about our story and not let it transfer onto us personally? You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? You know what I mean? Like here's my story, and please be gentle and nice. But well, there's stuff wrong with it, and I think they translate it like, oh, there's something wrong with me then, because I wrote that, right?
You
Does that
need
make
that
sense?
Jack
Yeah.
Sparrow mentality.
So what? Jack Sparrow.
You need the Jack
Yeah.
Sparrow mentality. But you have heard of me.
It honestly makes me think of like learning a musical instrument or like learning a foreign language. Whenever somebody tells you you're doing it wrong, it's good that they're telling you you're doing it wrong because it makes you better.
Mhm.
They're not saying you're a bad person because you can't play guitar well. They're
Right.
saying, hey, you didn't get the fingering on the neck right,
Right.
and that makes you a better guitarist. So whenever somebody says, hey, this thing in your book I didn't like, they may not say it in the kindest, most eloquent way because we're not all editors,
Yeah.
but they say, hey, I don't like this. And then it's our job to not go, hey, they don't like me. It's, hey, I don't know why they didn't like this, but let me explore
Mhm.
what is going on, and maybe ask you can ask your writing group or an editor, like, hey, this is some feedback I got. Could you maybe expound on why you think that's happening? Like, is this something that you can see in my work? And really unpack that, because not everybody's going to be trained in giving you an awesome critique, and
Right.
that doesn't mean that their critique is invalid, but it also
Right.
is not attacking against you. So
Right. Yeah.
I think it's difficult because so much of ourselves is in here.
mhm.
I can recall an author saying, your first book, you can try to hide yourself. Your second book, you could try to hide yourself. But the more you write, you actually do put a lot of yourself into your stories because a lot of your ideas do come out in your stories. That doesn't mean that every character that's in your story is you or some
Mhm.
version of you. Because there's one character I'm working on in one story. I can't stand her. And me and her, we're two different people. We are
Mhm.
two different people. But that's the point about being a writer, is being able to write different points of view that are different from your own, you know. And one thing you have to remember is that no one has to give you any feedback. There are authors praying for reviews, right? Because
Mhm.
they want to know if they executed the message that they wanted to execute and executed that well. And I've been personally attacked in reviews. I've had one person say this writer shouldn't write anymore. That's an attack, okay? And you
Right.
have to be able to differentiate that.
Yeah.
There was and I've shared the story before. There was one when, especially in the beginning, there was one reviewer who just didn't like my books, but she kept reading them. And he said maybe she doesn't know what a fan is. You know what I'm saying? So I kept reading them a lot. I mean, I'm not, and she always gave me low reviews. And it's hard not to take it personally because in that particular instance, she has said, I do not like this author's writing.
Yeah.
Which that's fine. That's totally fine. I understand that. So if you say that, then why do you keep picking up my books?
Mhm.
I mean, thank you. I'll take the money. Thank you so much. So, and some
Thank
people,
you for
some
your
authors,
support.
so maybe she didn't know what a fan was. And so, but then some people say it doesn't matter if they hate your book if they pay for your book. That's good, and that's good. If they pay for your book, that's a great thing, right? But she always
Mhm.
gave me low reviews. And one author said, I'd rather you not. I said, well, it's the nature of the business because I've seen movies I hated. Like, what
Yeah.
movie that everybody liked that I didn't like? I can't think of one, but there was one movie that everybody liked that I hated, and I could not understand why people like this movie.
Yeah.
Like, obviously it's me. So, but I say that because you don't have the producers knocking down your door ready to get you. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
you have those type of things. So I think you have to distance yourself from that. You have to distance yourself from the critique of you to the critique of the work,
Right.
because you're simply just the conveyor belt. Product is out of you. That's why when you do
Mhm.
your marketing, I think you should market yourself as opposed to your book, right?
Yeah.
Unless you're only going to do one book in your life, market yourself. I am a science fiction author. I am a historical romance author. I write genres, you know what I'm saying, or whatever
Mhm.
Yeah.
that is, right? You market yourself. You are the one you want people to come toward, not necessarily your book. And a lot of introvert authors market the book first. Most authors, they have, oh, get my series, the Omega series about, dragons and eagles, turning into chimeras, vampire chimeras, which I think is awesome, by the way. And so it's like, if you have that, then authors, because what they want to do, most authors, they want to pull away from themselves. Just read the book. Don't talk to me. But no, you are the conveyor belt. You are producing the
That
product.
came from you.
See what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So you should wrap it around you as a person. That's why if you notice, I say Parker J. Cole. I don't have my book title as a website. I have me.
Right.
There's more of that came from. I am
Right.
the author, speaker, podcaster. I am the one
Mhm.
doing this. So
Right.
you gear your marketing around yourself. Now,
Mhm.
some people may disagree with that. That's totally fine. But that's just my view. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
so that's how so if you put product, like, okay, they did not like that product,
Right.
not they didn't like me.
Right.
So
And
people
and
get people
I,
don't like you though.
yeah, and like that's something I always come back to is the whole thing with like Steve Jobs saying, if you want to make everybody happy, work at an ice cream parlor. And I have to say, I've worked at an ice cream parlor, and even there,
It didn't
people aren't
make me
happy.
happy.
And you know what? I've seen people literally slam their ice cream down on the counter because they were so unhappy with the product that they got. And you know what I have to say about that? They have got some shit going on in their lives. If they have
Like, if you
to
don't like ice cream,
act
bro.
that way. So it's not about you. At the end of the day,
True.
give them the grace to be like, hey, I don't know what is happening in your life.
Right.
Obviously, it's bigger than this.
Well, and that's exactly it, right? You never know what sort of mindset your reader is in when they pick up a book, right? So it might be someone who, so one of my good friends, she's going to kill me for saying this, but she's a perfect example, right? She's currently single and on the market. And so something for her is, right, maybe she has a little bit of that loneliness. And so she uses books as a way to connect to a character or really dive into their relationship. And so she recently said to me, we were talking about reading, and she's like, well, and I'm like, you need to stay up and read until at least this chapter in this book. And she's like, all right, well, if someone's mediocre son isn't keeping me up all night, some 6'7" ripped warrior might as well. And I laughed, and I'm like, that is a great way to think about it as a writer, is because she's really interested in how this plot is unfolding between these characters, because that is something that she wants to feel. But if she was like in a wonderful, happy romance right now, she might, still connect to those characters, but not on nearly as deep of a level, which in turn would change her mindset about the book when she went to go leave a review. And so, you have to, again, just write for you and do the best possible job that you can, and just not take those comments personally, because you don't know what's going on in someone's life. If they're going through something awful and they're reading a comedy, they might hate it. But if, everything's all hunky dory, then they might absolutely love it and find it hilarious. So it really, you can't please everybody.
No.
No, it's impossible. It's absolutely impossible to do that. So yeah. But yeah, so those are some of my thoughts about that. And it's hard though. So getting a tough skin, you have to keep getting hit with it. You know what I'm saying? You have to keep, you can't get a tough skin
Yeah,
if you don't get hit.
yeah. You're not
It's
born with a
going
tough skin.
hurt. Your first negative review that you get is going to hurt. I assure you. You can lie and say, "Oh, I'm fine." No, you're not. You're not fine. Okay. Some people say, "Oh no." Some people may have a higher tolerance for it. I'm not saying that. But when someone your first negative review, sometimes I wait for it. Like, come on, just come on, get out the way. Come on, just come. So,
Yeah.
because I know it's coming, right? And then it came. I'm like, okay, now I feel better. It's here. I've gotten hit. We're done. So it's hard, but over time, your skin will toughen. It will toughen.
Yes. And right when it's closing segment time, my dogs decide to start. And I've told you about my dogs, right? I have one blind dog and one very hyper vigilant dog who is staring at the window constantly. So anytime she barks, my blind dog has to start barking just because she doesn't want
Doing
to
a
get
job.
Assume there's something.
Yeah, they're letting me know I'm about to die, but whatever. So Yeah, so closing segment on what not to do when writing the end. What are our thoughts on that?
Hmm.
I'm gonna
Well, I
say
was gonna
no. You go first.
well, I was gonna say what not to do is expect that the end is actually the end.
Hmm.
The end is the end of that process. But as long as you get there, now you're done. Now you can get the weaving right. You get the draft done. But you want to write the end because then you finish that project. You have completed your book. That's the point. But it's not the end, but it's the end that you need it to be. So that's what you want to take with you.
That's really good. That's true. Oh, puppy,
So
look at.
yeah.
Oh no, he's so
Oh my
cute.
goodness.
Yeah, so
Oh my
she's gonna
goodness.
be
Oh, she.
pretty active. So
Oh,
so yeah. So yeah.
oh, for our listeners, Parker has a little puppy. What kind of? It look like a mix, dachshund mix.
It's called a Chiweenie. It's
Ah,
a Chihuahua and a
Oh.
that's
Dachshund.
right.
A
Oh my
Chihuahua and a
California,
goodness.
Dachshund.
yeah, California. We're very familiar with Chiweenies. Yeah.
Yeah. So she's very excited. Oh, she's very excited to see me. So if I mute this is what's happening.
Okay.
I'm sorry, she's scratching me. Sorry.
That's okay.
How embarrassing. Okay. Let me see I get it back
Yeah.
up here again.
Yeah.
So hey baby, hello.
I
Her
will
name is
say. I
Oh,
will
ow.
say.
I'm muting myself here.
I'll say don't fall victim to your excuses, right? And it's not necessarily just one excuse for you not to finish, whether it's a chapter or a page or your whole book, right? And you can be aware about that too. So sit down with a pen and paper and, for a week, write down every excuse that you have for not writing your book. So tonight, oh, I'm too tired. You write that down. Tomorrow, oh, well, I need to relax, so I'm going to watch TV instead. Write that down. And then the following week, hold yourself accountable. And when you hit that excuse again, don't let it deter you this time, right? And by kicking out those excuses one at a time, over time, you'll find out that you are actually capable of writing. So don't let yourself fall victim to those.
Nice.
And I think I'm gonna say, like, don't worry about perfect. Like, it's the nature of anything that we do in this life. You're going to get better, and by that very nature, it means that anything you're doing right now is going to be imperfect, and what you're going to do later is going to be better. And like, I mean, I look at my first book and I cringe because of some of the stuff in it, and it's just like, that's a good thing. Like, yeah, if I could go back and redo it, I would. But guess what? I can't, and it's fine, and it's better that it's done and I moved on. Because if I'd worried about perfect, I'd still be working on that first book instead of having finished, a dozen books since then. And so, like, just keep going, keep getting better, and just look at it as a monument of where you were at the time. So finish it, do the best you can, and just let it be.
Yeah. It's my turn, isn't it? Or Parker, do you have another one?
No, I said solid. That's all I said.
Solid, yeah. Yeah, mine are not solid. I can't think of any. I'm trying to think of something along the lines of, don't forget that you're not the first person to feel this way. Like every single writer struggles with this. Even today, I just read about imposter syndrome. Not just read about it, but I remember reading an article in a writer's magazine. And all these names that Parker mentioned earlier, Stephen King, there's a couple of others. We always talk about Stephen King. I am so sorry, but tons of other authors out there. However, they still struggle with this, So you're not alone with all these excuses that we brought. There could be even more, but you're not the only one. You know what I mean? Like, you're not the only alien here. Like, all of us struggle with this stuff all the time. So, and I'll also add that if you want to, you should write out the excuse. What's the excuse for not finishing this? And is it a fear? And why is it a fear? Just to look at it and go, okay, so these are my obstacles that I need to get over. And how can I fix this? If it's finding a community, if it's doing more research on how to write a book, if it's listening to more podcasts, there's all kinds of ways around this, because I was approaching 50 when I was going to publish a book. I published that at 51, but like, that was a big thing for me. I'm like, I'm old. Like, all these, especially when we go to conventions, there's like, everyone's like low 20s, high teens, and they're, oh yeah, I've got 3 books already, and I'm just like, oh my god, like I suck, you know. So there's all kinds of excuses, but anyway, that'll be mine. So that's it.
Real quick, I have to tell you, the oldest author I ever interviewed on my show, who wrote his first book, was 80.
Hmm.
And the youngest author I ever interviewed was 7, who published her book. So
Why
you're never
7?
too old or too young to
No, that
begin
is
your
too
dream.
young. Go play outside. What are you writing books for?
And here
She
I
was
am, like,
homeschooled, so she was pretty advanced.
Oh my gosh.
I just had a 16-year-old write a animal fantasy. I interviewed her on my show, and it was really, really good.
Hmm.
And I said, I didn't write this well when I was 16. But I said,
I
but she
didn't
was
write when I
homeschooled,
was
so
16.
Oh, okay.
I was writing, but I didn't write that well. But I read, and it's an animal fantasy, and it reads like an adult wrote this book.
Wow.
And I said, but then again, she was homeschooled, so it could be just the quality of learning she had. Because I was like,
Yeah.
my goodness, you know what I'm saying? Like, my
Yeah.
goodness.
These
But
are big
you're never
words.
too old or too young. You never are. You never are.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Parker. One more time, Parker, how can we find you?
You can find me on parkerjcole.com. You go to Amazon, and I forgot to give you my social media. So if you want to connect with me, I'm pretty active on Facebook, and I am sometimes active on X and sometimes active on Instagram. So just Parker J. Cole, you can just look it up, and I'm there.
Okay. Parker, fantastic topic. This was your idea. This is absolutely necessary. I mean, I don't know if there's a way to pin when this is going to be, when this is published, to pin this up at the top, because I feel like a lot of writers should start here. A lot of beginning writers should start with this one.
Yeah.
This
We
is
all made a mistake, so they don't have to, and that's the biggest thing. I think any author who is seasoned in their career, if they can give back and have the time, they should, because my goal is that one of my fears is that the younger people don't know how to write because with AI, and I'm not going to get into it too much, but AI is a detriment in that when you're writing, you learn how to develop your own voice and how you tell a story. With AI, if you're solely reliant on AI to write, we're not talking research or figuring stuff out, none of that. If you're using it to write, you don't know what your own voice is. You know what I'm saying? And that only comes through trial and error. That doesn't come with instant gratification. I know, like, well, that's why when I read my first book, it's like it's another different person. It's a completely different person who wrote that story. How would I know? Because I developed my writing style over the years. And as a new author, you're going to do the same thing. You know what I'm saying? You're going to have those same questions. So writing your book is helping you develop your voice. And you're the only one who has that voice. You're the only one who has it. So you want to do this thing. So don't give yourself any more excuses to not find your voice.
This is an excellent, I feel like, I swear to God. Oh, you need to write a book, Parker, called, I wrote it down, Every Word is a Victory. That's my share for the
Every word is.
All right, so thank you so much, Parker. I would love to have you on again at some point. We got tons of other things to talk about, AI or there's some
I'll
other
have
topics.
that conversation all day.
Yeah, awesome.
AI is so controversial in the
Oh, it
writing
is.
community. It's highly divisive.
And I work in the data field as my day job, so
Yeah,
it's a
it's
whole
highly
thing.
divisive. It's getting to the point where it's coming almost like a class war with authors right now. There are some who are so vehemently, if that's the way I say the word,
Yeah.
vehemently against it that it's like they want to get swords out and stab with a pen. You know what I'm saying? It's like, how dare you? And I'm like, I just use it for research. That's all I'm using it for.
Yeah.
No,
It's
get an
definitely
encyclopedia.
It's the devil, but yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I would love to come back. So thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm actually going to get going because I have a puppy here who probably has to go out.
Yeah.
So-
Oh,
All right.
fair.
All right. So,
All right,
folks, don't forget to subscribe to our channel at the link below so you don't miss any of the Writer's Room content. We always love to hear from our listeners. So if you have a question or topic you want us to dive into, please get in touch. The Queen, Parker J. Cole, thank you again. Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye.